Hi guys, it's your Sunday astrology class, Astrology 101 with Amityville Apothecary. I'm going to give it a few moments to announce that we are launching this. Hi guys, I hope you're enjoying your holiday weekend. Now I have a question. I turned off the overhead light, so is it bright enough? Or, hi Monica, is it bright enough or should I add more light? I do have like the ring light going and I have some natural light coming. Hi, hello everybody. So this is week 3 of Astrology 101. And we're gonna be talking, oh okay, good. I'm so glad that there's enough light. Yeah, the overhead was like, it was a lot. So today we're gonna be talking about Mercury and what that planet does and why it matters and what your sign is in that, if your planet is in that sign. So hopefully for these classes, hopefully you've gone on onto the internet and typed in your birth information to pull your natal chart. So your natal chart is your birth chart, your astrological birth chart. So what's required for that is your date of birth, the exact time of birth, and the location of birth. And that will generate a report which will list every single planet and what sign that's in. It will also talk about what house in the astrological wheel those planets reside in. And a natal chart serves as the blueprint of your soul. So every single person, even if you're twins, has different unique attributes in your chart that are unique only to you, like a snowflake. So what I encourage you all to do is to go onto the web, and there's a few websites that you can get a free natal report and get a list of all of your all of the different planets and what signs those are in and what houses they're in. And it's really insightful, because the more that you understand about astrology, the deeper understanding and insights you have. Come on in. Yeah. So I have 2 chairs. And I'm just,
sorry.
Oh, it's just you today?
Yeah,
cool.
just me today.
Welcome. Yeah, no, totally fine.
I brought a bottle of
it's
Hawaiian
cool.
Punch just in case I got thirsty. So.
Great. Mercury and Libra in first house. I'm Mercury and Libra as well. So you can put it there. That's okay. No
I hope
problem.
It's not going to be in a shot.
No, it's fine. I'm broadcasting right now, so I'm glad you're here. We're talking about Mercury today.
So that's the planet Virgo and Gemini.
Yes, we'll talk about all of that stuff. So I have Mercury in Libra. I also was born with Mercury in retrograde, which we'll talk about what that means too. So we will dive into what Mercury means. So Mercury is all about consciousness and communication. So it's the planet of your mind. Keywords associated with Mercury include communication, intelligence, technology, information, ideas, business, education, legalities. Let's see. I wrote a lot of notes. So there's more. Communication, speech, writing, knowledge, the intellect, reason, wit and learning. How you gather and process information is all ruled by Mercury, and how you express yourself is also dictated by Mercury. So it really reflects the way that your mind operates and processes information. So it's also integration of that information. Hi everybody, I'm glad you're here. So it symbolizes your style of communication, your reasoning ability, and the way that you think. So it's the closest planet to the sun. It's a fast-moving planet. So the time it transits between zodiac signs for each sign is only 3 to 4 weeks. That's very fast. And what it represents within your specific natal chart and what it means for you is it represents your mind and your style of communication, and what it can represent in the broader scale of when Mercury is in those different zodiac signs. It reflects the collective's mental patterns, the economy, as well as the media. So that's really interesting. You can see broader trends that are all influenced by Mercury. So Mercury, as you mentioned, rules 2 of the zodiac signs. It rules Gemini and Virgo. So as I go through the different signs, Mercury in those signs, we'll talk about why that makes sense and how they're in their natural state. It definitely is very aligned. It rules our cognition. It delineates how we perceive experiences in both verbal and nonverbal communication. And it also represents physical mobility. So that's anywhere where you're in transit. So when Mercury goes into retrograde, which I'll talk a little bit about, it affects your communication, your transportation, as well as technology. Mercury goes into retrograde 3 to 4 times during the year. And what that means, it's an opportunity to help us strengthen our capacity to kind of surrender our control and to release and to integrate the data. So what that means, because people are like, what does it mean when Mercury goes into retrograde? So when there are 2 trains that are going the same speed, they're going in alignment. But then if one train starts slowing down, it looks, from the perspective of the other train, it looks like it's going backward, right? If you look out the window, the slower train looks like it's going slower. It's not, it's just going at a slower pace. So that's what it means when Mercury goes into retrograde. It's taking a slower pace, and that's an opportunity to revisit, reintegrate, reignite, review, tie up any loose ends from what may still be open-ended. So every 3 to 4 months, there's a period of retrograde, and it's best to allow extra time if you're dealing with things in terms of communication. So maybe avoid heavy, hard conversations. If you're traveling, make sure to allow a lot of extra time, because if something can happen to delay, it usually will. And also with technology. Hi, Rosa. Technology. So technology tends to get a little bit glitchy when Mercury is in retrograde. It's just a time where we're all energy. We're affected by energy. So if something can go wrong, it usually will. So if there's an opportunity for you to avoid hard conversations or to avoid signing documents or partnership agreements or anything of that nature, wait until Mercury goes back direct if possible. And if not, it's always good to have somebody else review it or just take time to really be very thorough with it. I thought this was an interesting fun fact. The symbol of Mercury looks like this little alien guy. Okay,
it looks more like a devil.
It's like a little devil, right? So what's so cool, there's 3 components to the symbol of Mercury. So this cross is known as the cross of the earth or cross of matter. Then the circle, circle of spirit, okay? And then these little horns, see how it's kind of like a little satellite dish? So that is known as the crescent of personality. So that little satellite dish is like, I'm going to receive information from a higher power. So collectively, all 3 of those things comprise the Mercury symbol. So it's an interesting way to remember that Mercury rules consciousness, communication. It's like earthly matters, transportation, and technology, ways to integrate that information and to communicate with others. So just so you're aware of the dates of Mercury being in the retrograde period, the first phase was December 29th, 2022, and it ended January 17th. So usually it's like 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks period. Then there's April 21st to May 14th. The next one that we're going to be experiencing is August 23rd to September 15th. Yeah, so it's coming up at the end of the summer. And again, it's not a bad thing. It's just important to understand how to work with that energy, because it's more a time for inner reflection. So that time may be really helpful to go inside and do journaling or meditation or take reflective walks, or, you know, like sometimes people joke around the Mercury or retrograde, you'll see a revisiting of like exes will come out of the woodwork and be like, hey, because there might be some tied ends that need to be like tidied up. So don't retread. And then the last phase during 2023 is December 13th to January 1st is the last phase of Mercury being in retrograde. So, you know, as with anything, there's cycles, and it will go back direct. There's a slight shadow period. So like as a planet is like slower and then it picks up speed, it does kind of have like a stationary moment and a shadow period. So it starts picking up its regular momentum. So, you know, just avoid the heavy conversations during that time. So communication and integrating those ideas and processing those ideas. What does it mean for you? So hopefully you have your natal chart and you know what sign your Mercury is in. Mine is in Libra. You're going to check what yours is?
Yeah, I'm going to check my DM.
Yeah, go for it.
It's on my phone. So.
It's okay. I have 12 signs that I'm going to go through, so you can take your time. So mine is Mercury in Libra, and mine was, I was born with Mercury while it was in retrograde, which isn't so rare because it happens 3 to 4 times a year. However, it's interesting when you're born, when your Mercury's in retrograde. So I read this fun fact that I thought was interesting. Okay, so if you're born with Mercury retrograde in your birth chart, it doesn't negate your ability to communicate, but rather it bends your intellect inward. It deepens it, and it increases your need for reflection and causes greater concern about exactly how you're communicating, and it makes you a more independent and contemplative thinker. The insight of this author says, my guess is that authors with Mercury in retrograde spend more time mulling things over and revising than other writers. So that was interesting perspective from that author. But as I read it, I resonated with that because I'm a heavy journaler. I'm very reflective, especially since my Mercury's in Libra. It's always considering different sides and different perspectives. So take that as it seems relevant. What's your
Mercury in Pisces?
Mercury in Pisces.
Oh boy, I'm the last one.
No, that's the last one. Yeah. So we're gonna start with Aries because that's the beginning sign. It's 4:43. I will try not to be long-winded, and try to hit on all the points of all the signs. Okay. So Mercury, if your Mercury is in the sign of Aries, remember it's the fire starter. It's the cardinal fire sign. So never slow to jump to conclusions. You have lightning fast mind and a direct, forceful way of expressing yourself. Though you can be impatient, competitive, and irritable, sometimes you can find it a little difficult to concentrate. You are never boring nor wishy-washy. You are definitely willing to lay down the law if you must do so. Like you're just take charge kind of person. You express yourself assertively, and people generally do know what you think. So if you think about the Aries, it's the first sign. It's like, here I am, I'm bold, I'm going for it, and you communicate as such. So that's Mercury in Aries. Mercury in Taurus, Taurus being the sign, it's an earth sign, and it's a fixed sign, so it's very like practical. You are thoughtful, so your Mercury, your style of communication as well as processing, it's very thoughtful, conservative, and remarkably, you're very sensible. So you gather facts, you consider those facts, and you form a very careful argument, and then you like to have that presented diplomatically and say like, okay, this is my conclusion. After that, after you've done all of that work, once you've formed your conclusion, you'll pretend to consider other people's perspectives and points of view, and you'll be like, oh, that's very interesting. Meanwhile, you're not being swayed because you've already formed your opinion. So, you don't see any reason to alter your opinion because you've already formed your opinion. You've considered the facts, and that's it. It's closed. Moving on. So one thing that, if your Mercury is in Taurus, you tend to be inflexible. So it's very difficult to argue with you because in your mind you've already created and considered the facts, and opening up to new ideas, it doesn't come easily to you. It doesn't come naturally to you. You're fixed in your way. You're a fixed sign. It's in your nature, and you're just like, I've already made up my mind. That's it. I know what I know. So I know what I think. I know what I know. Moving on. That's Mercury in Taurus. All right. So Mercury in Gemini. This is in its natural home because Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo. Gemini is an air sign. It's all about thoughts and communication. So it's very naturally aligned. It's very comfortable if your Mercury is in Gemini. Gemini is a sign that is very smart, inquisitive, perceptive, persuasive, humorous, slapdash, which is just a great word that I love, and clever, because they tend to be very witty and clever, very fast intellect. So it's a mutable air sign. So it's a lot of different topics. It's in its natural state. So if it's all about integration, it's like input, 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 and you're fascinated about all different things. So your curious mind engages easily. You juggle tons of different interests. You talk like the wind. You could talk to the wall. You're just so happy talking and communicating. You can also change your mind with the wind. So you might be like, oh, look over there. Oh, no, now we're going to talk about what's over there. We're going to talk about this. So like, you have to be, you're very adaptable, but you can also like flip-flop. So just be cautious of that, because you can rationalize anything. You can be like, well, this is good too, because I also like this, and I like this, and I like this. So just with how you integrate and process, it's not like there's a right or a wrong, but figure out like what feels best to you. It's very, like I said, Mercury rules Gemini. So it's right at home there. So that is the synopsis of that. Mercury in Cancer is the next sign in the zodiac wheel. So Cancer, the crab, it is a water sign, and it's highly sensitive and empathic. So it's very insightful, reflective. You're exceedingly well tuned in because your intuition is really guiding how you receive and you perceive, and how you communicate. You are very nurturing and kind and caring. You communicate with compassion and you absorb information readily because you're very highly empathic. So you are constantly like, it's how do you integrate the information? How do you receive the information? How do you communicate? So you have an amazing memory and a remarkably intuitive mind. So one of the things you have to be cautious of, little crabs, is you have to watch out that your moods don't overwhelm your better judgment, okay? You tend to be a big wishful thinker, and that's not always based in reality. So like you have to just be careful that you don't like, you have to base it in reality. So, but Mercury in Cancer, it's a very compassionate, caring, empathetic, intuitive way of communicating and receiving and perceiving. And you just have to be careful because if you get like too jolted, you'll withdraw and you can get a little snappish, a little moody. The next sign is Mercury in Leo. So Leo is the lion. It is the sun sign, so it tends to be very dramatic. So if you have your Mercury in Leo, you have a dramatic flair. It tends to be very ambitious yet dignified. Think about that amazing lion, especially the male lion with the big mane. It's like majestic. So you think creatively, you express yourself vividly, you're confident in your opinions. Like I tend to think of the actor Nathan Lane. He's just larger than life, and it's just like that kind of energy that's like, I am here, like a presence.
Especially in The Lion King, actually.
Yeah, there you go. So, an opinion leader, you usually do see the big picture, and you're very persuasive, you're eloquent, you're very organized in your thinking, you're distinguished. You can also be, this is the caution that you have to be careful, you can be dogmatic. You can be boastful. You can be a little bit of a blowhard because you're like, I am lion, so, and you can also be a little unreserved in your enthusiasms. So again, got to tone it down a little to be effective. So when we talk in terms of chakras, we say it could be a little too open, like Leo can be a little too Leo. So you got to just keep that in check, even though how do you keep the sun in check? We all have like things to just be mindful of, right? So just beware that you don't go overboard. because then you'll lose people. If you go overboard and it's too much, then people are just going to be like, oh, it's too much.
Nobody likes a showboater.
Nobody likes a showboater. But there is there's a gravitational pull that Leos naturally have. And in terms of oration and communication and expression, it's very attractive because the sun, we're attracted to the sun. So your warmth does tend to overcome your tendency to show off. So that will carry you through. So just know that it's beautiful and warm and people want that, but if you get too close or too much, the sun can burn. Okay? All right. Mercury in Virgo. This is the second sign. It's okay. There's no wrong, there's no good, there's no bad. It's just understanding the energy.
No, because whenever, when Mercury goes into retrograde in both Virgo or Gemini, it's kind of horrible for them, and especially
it can be
because Virgos are usually organized, and when once that planet goes into retrograde, chaos.
When it's
nothing but chaos.
Yeah, so hopefully this will help you. So I hope you all heard that. So she's saying once Mercury goes into retrograde, sometimes chaos can ensue, especially when it's in Gemini or Virgo,
But mostly Virgo, because they're mostly the more organized.
Yeah, so Virgo is known as part of its characteristics as being very organized. So Mercury in Virgo, it's in its natural state because Mercury rules Virgo, and it's a very strong placement to have in Virgo. So it works very well. You're smart, subtle, you're very persistent, you're very knowledgeable, analytical, and sharp. Because again, it's not just communication, it's how you communicate and how you like to receive information, but it's how you integrate information too. It's also how you operate. It's like if you were a computer, how do you operate? So Virgo is very structured, very analytical, very sharp. Nothing escapes your notice, including logical inconsistencies. So if somebody's talking and then they hear something that doesn't make sense, they'll be like, wait, and like they don't miss a beat. They're very, very sharp. So Mercury in Virgo, it's extra. So this little fun fact made me laugh. So Mercury with Virgo can be a secret idealist who bemoans how things should be versus how they are. So again, it's that Virgo that's like, well, in an ideal world, it should be like this, but you're choosing to do it this way. So like you're constantly viewing things and perceiving things in life, and you're like, ideally it should be like this. So you have to be careful that you're not a nitpicker. Your shadow is you have to watch nitpicking, because nobody likes a know-it-all, okay? And nobody likes a critic, and they can make very good prosecuting attorneys. So keep that in mind. You're a brilliant thinker. You are an excellent conversationalist, and you have an extraordinarily fine mind that is in its natural home, Mercury and Virgo. So it is, it's a good placement. If your Mercury is in Libra, like myself, so you tend to be very rational in thought, as well as elegant in your expression. I don't know if I'm always elegant in my expression, but I think it's always undermining my thought process when I do communicate. So even if I'm a little brash, I know I'm making a conscious choice, because I'm always aware of the impact that it's going to have, because I'm seeking a balanced viewpoint, and I intuitively understand the best solution is often the simplest solution. So Libras are very, they like to keep things calm and balanced and aesthetically elegant. They like people to feel comfortable, so they're very diplomatic usually. So Mercury in your communication in Libra tends to be that. So they're very prudent. Everyone that I know that has Mercury in Libra, very discreet, like a vault. And they possess a strong aesthetic sense. So always, because Libra is a sign ruled by Venus, beauty and aesthetics are very important. You can manage to be objective in a charming and diplomatic way. So always with discretion. And you love to debate, and you're very interested in the opinions of other people who you respect. So you don't always want to hear out the opinions of other people, but other people that you respect you welcome their perceptions and their feedback, and you like a healthy debate, like so that you can understand and just volley ideas. Again, Libra's an air sign, so it's all about the thoughts. So what that Mercury and Libras may have is in the privacy of your own mind. Sometimes you can vacillate and bounce back and forth with like uncertainty about some decisions. So be careful of that. And you're constantly trying to consider all sides of a question or of a situation. So sometimes it can take you a long time to make a decision, or cause you to second guess yourself in the things that you're saying, because you're always trying to be considerate of all parties. So Libras oftentimes are being seen as like maybe indecisive, but what's underlying that is a consideration like, I don't really want to hurt anyone's feelings. I don't want to make waves. What's the optimal situation? And I can see from this perspective. So like it's really considerate, but you have to take a stand in order to make a decision and move forward, right? So how do you do that tactfully? So that's Mercury in Libra. Mercury in Scorpio. Scorpio. You have a penetrating, resourceful mind that continually probes beneath the surface. Oh, and Monica says absolutely 100%. So that continually probes beneath the surface. Scorpio as a sign is masterful for digging out what lies beneath the surface. So Mercury, they're masterful of pulling out that information. Okay, so you're very, very observant. You perceive everything around you. You could sit still and you are constantly observing and perceiving and taking in that input and processing constantly. So at your best, you're an eagle-eyed observer and a profound thinker. You take nothing at face value, and you often suffer from suspicion and even paranoia. So you have to be careful, because not everyone is out to get you. I think I talked about this last week when I was talking about the moon in Scorpio. Like, not everyone is out to get you. But Scorpios, it's what lies underneath. So they are masterful. They don't have to say anything, and then they will extract information from everyone and get them telling like deepest, darkest secrets. It's a talent. It's a skill.
That's why they're the sneaky kind of smart, not the smart like very smart, but they're the sneaky smart.
It can be considered sneaky smart. It's something that you have to, it's a fine line. So they get a bad rap as being secretive and sneaky, but it's just the way that they operate. Like, they may be tight-lipped, but they're constantly perceiving. So again, Mercury is all about not only communicating, but how we perceive and how we integrate that information. So you're analytical, you can be very shrewd and incisive, and you are capable of digging out all sorts of information. This is a great, great skill if you want to be a detective, if you want to be a researcher, if you want to be a therapist. Excellent gifts to have in terms of how you're able to extract information and dive deeper. Where I caution that it can become dangerous is because oftentimes there's a biting wit, and then also think about the tail of the Scorpio. Sometimes you can use words as a weapon. So if there's like a perception of danger, they'll strike. So be careful of that, because sometimes it can be perceived instead of real. And Scorpio also has to be careful of like keeping a grudge. So that's also integration and like perception of analytics, right? But I mean, Scorpios are very, very perceptive. It's all about death and rebirth and emotions, right? Like what lies beneath the surface. So we all need that. If you're with a Scorpio or Mercury in Scorpio, just know that even if they're quiet, they're watching. Okay? Mercury in Sagittarius is a fire sign. It's a mutable fire sign that's all about higher learning. So Mercury is your communication and perception and mobility. Sagittarius is the great adventurer. Wants to see what's out there, what's more. So you have a searching intellect and a wide-ranging mind. There is no limits. You want to know it all, you want to learn it all, and then you want to learn more. So when you're mulling over all the big questions of life, as you love to do, you can be highly inspired. You love insights. You love philosophy. You can be very grandiose in philosophizing. You're a conversationalist. You're very entertaining. You're very wise. But then also, sometimes you can be very dogmatic and hypocritical. So like when it comes down to like details, you're so like onto the big picture. Like sometimes you'll just brush aside the details because you're like, that doesn't matter. Like I think of the CEO of this terrible accident with the submersible machine that went down. Everybody that spoke to him was like, oh, I think it needs a little more testing. But he was like, no, it doesn't. It's unsinkable. Like it's really like the story of the Titanic.
That's what they said about the Titanic.
It's so sad because he truly believed that he was revolutionizing, and that those are just details. You're slowing me down. Don't tell me it can't be done. Well, it needs to be based in reality. So it's great to be that great big thinker and like to be unstoppable, but details matter. So you have to be careful of that when Mercury's in Sagittarius. It's fun, it's inspiring, it will get people to go and figure, and that's great when like then you get a Virgo to come and figure out how, and then you get a Capricorn to actually like do it. So it's inspiring and like go for it, but it can be very idealistic, but details are like in there. So another thing about Sagittarius that you have to be cautious of, especially Mercury in Sagittarius, is sometimes Sagittarius can be very blunt. They can be very direct and sometimes a little tactless. So sensitivity is not really the strong point of Sag as a sign because it's a fire sign. It's like, we're just moving forward. We're doing it. So like if it hurts your feelings, I'm sorry. But they make up for it with their sense of humor. Because like their intentions are good. They're not trying to be jerks. So just use caution with that, okay? Mercury in Capricorn is the next sign. Capricorn is an earth sign, and it is like that little doer. He's just working hard to get it done. So it's an earth sign that is very methodical. It's realistic. It's very organized. It's a systematic thinker. It likes order, and it's like that little engine that could. It's just going. So you know how to focus. You always try to act like an adult. You just tend to act like an adult because you like that structure. You can be very conventional. You have to watch out for being rigid or pessimistic. You always try to be very even-handed. It's comfortable for you to be like even-handed and grounded in your decisioning. And that even if that means overcoming your own biases. So you're a very serious thinker. You value practical information, and you're very responsible to gather facts. It's like similar to Taurus, but you do communicate clearly and responsibly if your Mercury is in Capricorn. So it's like very organized, structured, grounded, balanced, practical. It's not, you're not going to get that vim and vigor of a Leo or a Sag, but it's like dependable. So Mercury in Capricorn. Okay, the next sign, the 11th sign, is Mercury in Aquarius. Aquarius is an air sign. It is a fixed air sign. So I like to say, if you have to think about fixed air or still air, think of outer space. So it's fueled by ideas. You have an inventive, often brilliant mind. So like you can think of somebody that's like Thomas Edison, like just brilliant. They think on behalf, so progressive, humane, and you are happiest when you're committed to a cause. Like for all of mankind, like you get behind causes, you're passionate about it, you're like progressively thinking on behalf of the age of Aquarius. You know that song, this is the dawning of the age. So it's like on behalf of like the world. That's how you think. You express yourself in a very unique way, and you gain your greatest insight often in momentary flashes of inspiration. Okay? So your perceptions are distinctly your own. You dance to your own beat and you formulate your own opinions, even if other people like don't even begin to understand. You're like, this is my opinion, this is my thought, this is what I'm doing. So you can become excited about social problems or an abstract theory, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's great, but you have to be careful that you don't become so attached to an idea that you become inflexible. Like not allowing facts or people to like stand in your way. It's like you have to, don't get so blinded by like a cause that like nothing else can penetrate that, because outer space, you're like, so woo, we have a soul contract here. So we have to integrate things here based in reality. So like I have a term that says you can't boil the ocean. You have to start with like small steps here and actionable things that you can do rather than trying to take on such like outer space. You know, like you have to, let's bring it down. Let's focus on like a smaller, bite-sized, palatable segment. And that's Mercury in Aquarius. Like you're just a big, broad, unique, quirky, out-of-the-box thinker, which is great. So many inventive thoughts and ideas come from Aquarius, because it's just like, hey, we don't have to do it that way because it's been done that way. Like, let's think differently. And that's a strong suit of Aquarius. And then the last sign, Mercury in Pisces, like my friend here, Pisces is a water sign. It is the 12th, it's the 12th sign in the zodiac. So it's often said that Pisces is the oldest, the wisest, they've had the most past lives, like the most spiritual, intuitive gifts reside in Pisces. So the notes that I took here, any planet in Pisces leads to the triumph of feeling over fact. So it doesn't matter whatever planet you have, if you have a planet in Pisces, it's going to be led by feeling over groundedness.
Yeah, I actually have a few. I actually have a few.
You have a few? There you go.
I've got the Sun, I've got Mercury, and I also got Venus.
Okay, there you go. So this is going to apply to all of those. So you respond to people and situations highly instinctively. Again, you've been around the sun many times in many lifetimes. Mm-hmm. So often making the right decision without knowing why. It just comes intuitively to you. So as you integrate and you communicate, like you just know. You have a knowingness. So you understand how people operate. You find it easy to adapt to changing circumstances. Again, that's where the water comes in. You just go with the flow and things change. And your mind is very receptive, very subtle and empathetic and imaginative and psychic. But logic is not your strong suit. It's very dreamy. Yeah, she's saying, yeah, Pisces is very dreamy.
Can't help it.
No, you can't help it. It's just how it is. So logic is not your strong suit. But on the other hand, you have ready access based on your intuition. So like right below the surface of your conscious thoughts, you have an underlying river of your intuitive impulses that are guiding you. And that's just how you operate. You just know, or you're like, I'm just going to do this. And like go with your gut or like your third eye, that knowingness, that's the gift of the Pisces. So Mercury, that's what guides you, and also like how you tend to integrate things into your own life. So those are the 12 zodiac signs of Mercury. Let me know if there's any questions about the different Mercury and the different signs online. And then also, I do want to quickly, these are my little cards from ages ago when I took my classes. What I wanted to, retrograde. Okay, so this is some notes that I took from when I was taking my astrology classes. So retrograde explanation. It's this symbol is retrograde. So if your natal chart has that, it means that planet was in retrograde. So when a planet is in retrograde, the energy is turned inward, making it more subjective. So it operates more on the inner side of life. things concerning the planets that are retrograde will be slower to coming into manifestation because these people are inclined to be more subjective, to think more deeply concerning the energies. So, oh, there it is. It's that sign.
It actually kind of looks like the prescription sign.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. I'm glad it's helpful for you. So it's interesting. It's not just Mars. All planets do go into retrograde, and they each have their own cadence and flow and periods and dates that they go retrograde. So just know that when a planet goes into retrograde, it's a time to kind of go within. So if Venus, which rules money and love, goes retrograde, it's kind of a time to be reflective and bring that energy in. So today we're talking about Mercury. Next week I'm going to talk about Venus. So since I still miraculously have like 20 minutes before I'm totally at 1 hour, not that I have to go an hour, I thought it would be really quick to give you like top level description of the different houses, because as you're looking, I don't want to overwhelm you guys. So I'm just going to do like really top level of this. But as you look at your natal chart, there's 12 houses. And each house is in charge of different aspects of your life. So if you have planets in those houses, know that it has a heightened importance in this lifetime. So, for example, if my Mercury happens to be in the 4th house, the 4th house rules my home and my family. So, is it normal to have many placements in one house? It may be. I mean, there's no normal or abnormal, but it may mean that there is significant importance in that house. So there's what's called a stellium, which is a lot of different planets in one house, right in a row. There's a heightened importance in that house. So the 8th house, for me, in my chart, I have a lot of planets and asteroids in that house. I don't want to, this is a beginner course, so I don't want to overwhelm. If there's 2 planets that are like sitting on top of each other within a certain percentage, a certain degree of math, it's called conjunct. So that means like there's a very important correlation between those 2. So in my chart, my Sun and Pluto are conjunct. So Pluto, which is a planet of death and rebirth, sits right on top of my Sun. So for me, in my life, I've had many, many periods in my life of death and rebirth and death and rebirth and death and rebirth. The 8th house happens to be all about death and rebirth, and I have a stellium of planets there. So something in my soul contract says that death and rebirth is an important part of my soul contract in this life incarnation. So I just want to talk about, so take note, if you have a lot of planets in one house, that's an important house for you in this lifetime. So the first house, just real top level stuff, the first house is all about self. So it's what you look like, your personal self, the present, it defines your personality, appearance, your disposition, and your manner, your outlook on life, and the window through which you view the world. So it's your appearance and your surface personality. That's the first house. The second house reflects what you own and your resources. It's your financial standing, your money, your possessions, your peace of mind, the manner in which person meets obligations. So the first 6 houses reflect all about you, your personal self, and then 7 through 12 reflect you as it relates to others, to other people or other aspects of life, you in the outside world. So the second house is what you own and your resources. It's the repository of the strongest desire. It's your emotional nature and one's individual desires, that which the life is dedicated to redeem. So it's a house of values. It's earning and spending capacity. So your money, possessions, and values are reflected in the second house. The third house reflects what you think, your ability to relate to your environment. So it's very much aligned with like what we're talking about with Mercury here. So how you synthesize the powers of the conscious mind, your dexterity, your restlessness, any duality. It also reflects your early education and your early environment and short journeys. Your brothers and sisters and your attitude towards them are reflected in the third house. Your acquaintances and your neighbors are reflected in the third house. Memory, perception, and speech. Your writings, news, communications, and rumors. So keep in mind, guys, we're talking about the third planet. We had the sun, the moon, right? The sun is the first house. The moon is the second house. The third, Mercury. There's a lot of parallels, right? So your memory, your perception, and your speech, your communication. It can include taken for granted skills, communication, short journeys, brothers and sisters. So it's your mind and your mental equipment, your mental capacity in the third house. So the fourth house is your base of operations. The fourth house is the bottommost house at the bottom of the circular chart in the astrological wheel. So that's your base of operations at the core foundation. The inner world, in the outer world, it reflects your home. In the inner world, it reflects your soul. So it reflects that which is hidden within the depths of self. It is the index to your home and all of your domestic affairs. It defines the nature of your residence. It can reflect the latter part of life, the end of matters. It can also reflect real estate and property. The fourth house also represents the lesser dominant or the lesser prominent parent in your life. So the 10th house reflects who's the boss, and then the fourth house is the more feminine energy. It doesn't have to be your mom. Like if one energy is more dominant than the other, it's the less dominant is reflected in that fourth house. So it's your home, your roots, a parent, the circumstances at the end of your life are all reflected in the fourth house. Okay, the fifth house is all about self-expression. Any effort put forth to distinguish yourself from others. I didn't know I was going through my flashcards today, so forgive my reading, but I hope it's helpful for you. So children you create, books you write, affections you display, anything that bears your personal stamp, that's a reflection of you. The fifth house also reflects all emotional and romantic tendencies which come from the heart. So romance, how you reflect your romance is the fifth house. So it's also the house of hidden karma and misuse of the will and love. So if you misuse your gifts, there's a cost karmically for that. It rules children. So children in the mind, like writing a book, or also your physical children, and the emotions. Let's see. Love affairs and luck, or lack of it, is shown in this house. And your creativity is ruled in this house. So amusement, dramatics, theater, school, all of that is fifth house stuff. So the sixth house, hi guys, it's so good to see you on here. So the sixth house is all about the house of self-adjustment. So that's the house of work and health, or the lack of either. So they are tied together. So the busy person has no time to be sick. It reflects your food, your clothing, your comforts, your domestic pets in this house.
It also represents day jobs, health, and routines.
What is it? Yes.
Yeah, because I have the sanctuary, so it tells me like
yeah,
what is.
Totally. Routines are totally part of that. So it's
and mine's in Aquarius actually.
Oh, there you go.
My sixth house is in Aquarius.
And you'd love to be in service. There you go. That makes sense. It's perfectly parallel for you. Mm-hmm. So let's see. It's termed the house of service in that it portrays one's capacity to serve, as well as the character and qualities of those who serve him. So your employees, dependents, and the relationships with them. So let's see. Work and health are really ruled by the 6th house. Okay? So then the 7th house, the 7th sign is Libra. The 7th house, think of parallels there. So this is all about marriage and other partnerships. So this begins you plus someone else. So it can be a business partnership. It can be a romantic partnership. This is you as it relates to someone else. So it's the house of not self in opposition to the personal self. So you versus others, or in relationship to others. So it's the beginning of the individuality rather than personal concerns in the wheel. So it's all about like the we consciousness. So marriage and partnerships really is key here. It reflects cooperation or the lack of it. So if there's some planets that are like in distress there, that it will be reflected in partnerships in that house. Yeah, any adversaries that you have, the relationships we choose, our personal and business partners are all 7th house matters. Could you do me a favor, honey? Just flip that switch on, because now it's starting to get a little overcast. I just want to have...
This one?
Yeah, we're going to have light. Better light. Sorry. I know. That one's a little bit harsh, but I think we need a little bit of light. Okay, thank you. Okay, the 8th house. I'm just going to get through this quick. And again, I'm not diving deep into this, but it's just fun for you to know what the houses represent, because if you have planets in them, it's extra sensed. But if you don't have planets, it's not that they're not important. It's just important to know like what everything rules. So 8th house, like I said, I have a lot of planets in the 8th house. So this is the house of generation. It does rule sex, degeneration or regeneration. So it's all about transformation. Birth, death, rebirth. How do we learn from the experiences and grow and transform as a result of what we experience and grow through that? So spiritual, mental, physical, death, and the matters that surround death. So even death meaning something that ends, and then the aftermath of what comes after that. So the 8th house is very psychic. The 8th and the 12th houses are the 2 psychic houses. So people who have planets there, they often have brought over a legacy of sensitivity to the invisible currents. So if there are planets that are afflicted in that house, they in past lives may have been involved in the misuse of those psychic facilities. So yeah, it rules legacies and goods of the dead. Oftentimes it's other people's money also, as you're talking about like inheritance and stuff. Your Chiron is your wound. That's like that's part of your life's work that you have to work to heal. So talk about like death, birth, death, and rebirth and transformation. So you can dive in there a little bit deeper to find out like, you probably have some heavy lifting related to your Chiron in that 8th house. So it's the 2nd from the marriage house. It rules the partner's possessions as well as the financial conditions. And let's see. These are main themes for the 8th house. Sex, death, regeneration, and other people's money. Those are ruled by 8th house matters, okay? 9th house, because we're running out of time now. 9th house is the realm of the superconscious mind and the deeply ingrained religious philosophy of self. So 9th house, so the 8th house is ruled by Scorpio. 9th house is Sagittarius. So it's all higher learning, higher understanding, higher power. So you see the correspondences? Intuition, inspiration, spiritual visions, long journeys, expansion of horizons, both mental and spiritual, as well as sometimes physical. So it's the house of spirit. So let's see. Worldwide contacts, mental adjustment to racial ideas. So it's just broadening of the mind. It's cultural anthropology. So it's understanding. It's the rule. It's the house that rules your in-laws. Okay, it may reflect your in-laws. So the 9th house matters are higher education, long journeys, religion, philosophy, higher learning, and travel. Okay, 10th house matters. This is all about your career, your status, your reputation, and the dominant parent. This is reflected in this house. So prestige, honor, and standing in society is reflected in the 10th house. It is an amplifier of the personality, so how the public views you. Okay? So it reflects your professional career and your reputation. It will reflect the dominant parent in your life. It may reflect your employers. Again, that parental figure. So if you're not an independent worker, it may reflect your employers. And if you do work for yourself, it reflects your work in this house. So it rules your career, your reputation, and your status. So very interesting. You're at the top you're at the top now. So the 4th house is the foundation. The top is your midheaven. So that is like where you aspire to be, where you're growing to be, your life's path, your goals. And then the 10th house is right there, and that's your status and your reputation. So it's interesting because my sun is conjunct my Pluto and conjunct my midheaven. So they're all right there. So I got a lot of transformation in my life. And actually, by taking my experiences and talking with all of you and creating this healing center, you know, for every point in your journey, I see that reflected in real life. It's really interesting. So, okay, 11th house, because we have a few minutes left. 11th house stuff. This is all about your friends and your aspirations and your goals and your objectives. So it's social relationships. It's you in groups of people. And who are your social circles? It's your hopes, your wishes, the projects you're involved in, your ambitions. The ruler of this house on your chart and any planets within it are an index to your idea of happiness and your probabilities of attaining it. So dive in there. Look at your 11th house and say like, all right, what's my idea of happiness? Let me see what planets are in there. Let me see what sign is ruling that in my natal chart. So it is reflective of your personal and your emotional desires and the people you surround yourself with. It indicates higher level of consciousness in your mind and your emotion, because that's that joy. It's the stuff that brings you joy. Yeah, it's your friends and your social circles and your interests, and you know, I think it's a fun house to learn more about. And then your 12th house, this is like, again, the most mysterious, right? It's the last house in the zodiac wheel, the 12th house. So it's the house of drawn shades, that which is hidden. So the 8th and the 12th house are the two most strong psychic houses. So if you have planets in that house, you probably have some intuitively natural psychic gifts. So that reflects the subconscious attitudes that may come from past lives in this life. It is the house of self-undoing and frustration and limitation and confinement. It's the house of charity. So it's very much about like giving back to others. And it's also the house of karma. So it's the house that like for all of your good deeds and bad deeds, it's where you pay the piper. So this is all about the subconscious mind, and it may reflect your enemies or like your deepest, darkest secrets and seclusion. So it's very mysterious. It's like serve or suffer. So if you're not living a life of service, then the whole point of the 12th house is like to be of service to others. So you maintain your autonomy by being of service to others, and then the rule of karma is everything will come back, and everything's exponential. It's the rule of 3. So what you put out into the universe comes back to you. So if you put out good, it will come back threefold. If you do bad, it will come back threefold and then some. So the 12th house is kind of like tying up the end of the cycle before you start another cycle. So
that's why it's ruled by Pisces.
That's it. It is ruled by Pisces. Yes, there you go. So I hope that that's helpful. I've been wanting to talk about houses, and I didn't know how to. I don't want to overwhelm you all, but I hope that it's helpful as we delve into all of the planets. And then I think as we go through it, the zodiac signs and personalities are going to just continue. You'll see the themes that keep coming up, so you understand what the planet does and then the personality of that planet and what it means for you. But then to understand the house that it resides in, you can really start seeing how astrology comes to life for you. So I hope this is helpful. Oh, I'm so glad it's less intimidating. Yeah, I mean, astrology is extraordinarily complex and mathematical, but once you understand it in like bite-sized, breakable, like palatable pieces, it becomes a lot less intimidating and more fun, because then you can start seeing like little snippets and be like, oh, that's why. I'm glad it's easy to understand this way. Cool. So like once you understand that, like, I'm a Mercury in Libra, but if I'm dealing with a Mercury in Aries, they might be coming in hot, and I'm like, oh, that's so uncouth. Like, you know, but like you can understand and just know that that's their nature. Or if someone's a Mercury in Capricorn, they want things like spelled out, very like fact-based, balanced. So things really, next week we're going to talk about Venus, which rules love and money. Okay, those are two very popular subjects. And of course, Venus is just
the Maria
awesome.
Antoinette of Venus.
Yeah, Venus is awesome. So we're going to have a lot of fun. I hope this is helpful. Feel free to watch us however many times. You can share it with your friends. I'm going to save it. And I wish you all a wonderful, safe, happy holiday weekend. Sayonara, guys. All right.